So we did cover how often should I have intercourse. What sexual practices can improve the chances of conceiving. A lot of this has been studied, probably in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And typically there isn't anything specific. As long as there's one active intercourse in the fertile window with ejaculation in the vagina, that's all that's typically needed to achieve conception. There's a lot of things that I see on social media that people recommend, but going back to the medical literature, there isn't anything specific that we recommend except for an active intercourse without any lubricants that can potentially be toxic to the sperm. Now, let's talk about lubricants quickly. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. And most of that data is based on sperm studies in the lab. So basically they take sperm, they put it in the petri dish, they add lubricant to it, and they see what percentage of sperm stops moving in a certain way. And they say, oh, this lubricant is toxic to sperm. The environment inside the female is much different than an in vitro lab. And the sperm, we know, swims into the cervix and into the fallopian tube very, very quickly. So it's unlikely that in a natural environment, any specific lubricant will negatively impact the clinical pregnancy rate, even if it impacts sperm behavior in the laboratory. So my recommendation typically is whatever works for you as a couple in terms of a lubricant should be okay. Without saying that, unless there's a sperm abnormality that can be impacted further by a specific lubricant. What about lifestyle? So what does lifestyle have impact on your fertility? So there's a bunch of things in lifestyle that we like to address at Fertility Cloud. Things that you can do to improve your chances of conceiving, and further, things that you can do to improve your chances of any kind of intervention. So for example, if you're doing IVF, or if you're taking Clomid, or if you're taking any other fertility medicines, or you're doing IUIs, what can you do at home to make those things more effective? And so there are things that we know is problematic, and then we speculate on things because the data is controversial. So the one thing that we know is problematic is smoking. And so even if you or your partner smokes, or if you're around an occupation where there's a lot of smoking, even if you're not smoking, inhaling that smoke, any metabolite of tobacco, we can actually identify in the fluid around the egg, and it causes problems. So within the ovary specifically. So if you can avoid smoking, avoid tobacco, avoid interacting with other people that smoke, that would certainly improve your chances. The issue that we find is that even if, let's say, your partner is a smoker, but they're smoking outside and they practice really good hygiene after they're done smoking, the majority of the smoke that's inhaled actually goes into the lungs. And after you interact, that smoke is still inhaled through that interaction. And then we can find that within the context of the ovary. Alcohol. The vast majority of time, if you're not using alcohol during your treatment cycle, for example, whether you're doing Clomid or IVF, it's really not an issue. But if you, for example, started your treatment, whether it's oral or injections or anything like that, we see that alcohol can have a negative effect. So abstaining from alcohol during treatment is what we strongly, strongly recommend. What about exercise? So exercise has multiple ways it impacts your success rates. We do know that women that have a moderate or recreational exercise program, so for example, they exercise 30 to 40 minutes a day, it doesn't really matter what they do. They can lift weights, they can run, they can swim, they can go to the gym. Those women have a higher probability of conception with treatment than women who are sedentary. Now, the women who exercise to exhaustion, 5 to 6 days a week, meaning that they're completely exhausted by the time they've finished their workout, they actually do a little bit worse than women who exercise recreationally. So what we always recommend is a moderate exercise program of whatever type of exercise that that individual prefers or is able to be consistent with. And that's much better than being sedentary, and that's also better than exercising to complete exhaustion. So what about caffeine use? We do know that consumption of about 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine correlates with the increased probability of miscarriage. We don't understand the mechanism, but we recommend that women decrease their caffeine intake when they're trying to get pregnant. And the safe limit is probably about 2 to 3 cups. So more than that, or equivalent, more than that is probably problematic. Less than that, it would be fine. But there's absolutely no reason to completely eliminate caffeine intake if that's something that gives you pleasure or you enjoy. So what about diet? Diet's a big controversial topic as well, and we don't really know what the best diet is in order for you to conceive. The data that's out there, kind of looks like this. We've taken women who are doing IVF and we put them on different diets and we see who can do better. Now, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to enforce a particular diet in any study, but that's the best data that we have. And so compare it to everything, it looks like that the Mediterranean diet, so basically a diet that's very low in processed food, high in fruits and vegetables, high in fish, about twice a day, low in saturated fat, those women, when they underwent IVF, did better. Now, it's difficult to extrapolate that to women who are not doing IVF, but that's kind of the best data we have. So we do recommend for women who are trying to conceive to go on a Mediterranean type diet. So that kind of covers the lifestyle. And unfortunately, there's so much on the internet that may be controversial, or maybe different people have different opinions on it, that it's kind of tough to find what would be the optimal lifestyle intervention. But in terms of what we discussed, that's what we recommend as Fertility Cloud.